happened in the past to you, or none of the principles that you've seen your father, brother, mother, aunt, and your raised to ever then talk about. The last thing that they talk about, this is a better comparative because these wartime Japan is then like the worst thing to ever happen. A couple reasons why it's not. If you are a family in wartime Japan who can have maids to take care of you, move to rural estates when your mother dies, it means you are somewhat privileged. It means that you can then take away. The rural estates of the wartime Japan did not have bombings going on, which is the exact reason why after the mother's death, after the incident, the safest thing that for them to do is take all their taxes, go to the countryside, because that is where they were going to be safe. Number one, after World War II, like Japan was very quickly bouncing back into like what is now a beautiful economy. And this is the sort of economy that like Mahito would probably be living in when he's in his 40s, when he's in his 30s or in his 50s. This means that he is going to then have a good life that we know of, that has some level of guarantee that he is going to have like schools and like universities and great opportunities that would happen. These are all things that are not only just bad over there, they just do not exist. There's no form of schooling in the spiritual world, there's no sort of education, meaning that the intellect that Mahito would have would always be of a 14-year-old boy at max. Meaning that these are the same principles and these are the same like educational points that he's going to use to make decisions in the spiritual world, which not only means that he is young right now, because he wouldn't have access to education, information, AI, Google, and all of these things, means that he wouldn't have that sort of like future development that people oftentimes going to have. He's going to be an illegitimate ruler of a spiritual world whose principles he as a human does not even know, he did not create, nobody there to guide him, and at any point if something goes wrong, which unfortunately within the entire lifetime of him being there, would definitely go along, and at some point he would have literal nobody to turn to. This is why the comparative is better. The comparative isn't just him being in his house with his family, it's also him getting to experience what love is, experience what friends provide, going to like hangouts. It's him creating a family, having children, experiencing what fatherhood is. It's him going to his daughters for his dad. It's him doing all of these things that are the ultimate peak experiences of human and humanity. And these are things that he is as a human who comes from like DNA materials of their parents would still hold dear to them very, very much. These are long-term ambitions, right? On the short term, it looks like birthday parties that he's never going to go to. These are like people who's never faces that they're going to see. He has already gone through a lot of trauma after his mother's death. He has had nightmares. He has had problems. And even after all of that, the last thing that you can do to a child is that give them the hope that, oh, this is a perfect world. You are the sole ruler. And then leave him when you die. And a couple of days later, when he needs comfort, when he's going through puberty, when he's going through a bad decision, when he's going through like a psychological dilemma of what to do, what not to do as a ruler, he has nobody to turn to. As that is the future of Mahito as it looks like, given that nobody's life is perfect, that is why he wouldn't choose to do so. He needs to live as a human, he needs to live among humans. He's a sponge who needs to absorb everything that the world can provide to him. Touches of humanity, which is given by AAUB. Very proud of you.
I have to use the speech now to open the closing half of the page. I open the number 5.
Life can be very unpredictable. Sometimes we feel so depressed, so frustrated, and we feel no control of our life that we just want to disappear to some other world, right? Or to go somewhere we at least know what we can do, we have a control, and we are sure of it, right? Same thing, especially when you are a young boy. Here we are talking about Mahito. Mahito is cannot be just compare him to any other young boys, right? Because all the things that he has experienced in his life, it's so much different than anything other than that. Exactly when we are talking about Mahito, why exactly things that makes him so much different than all the other people here, right? First of all the things that he has gone through, he is a boy who does not always think something in a very much rational way. He gives more importance to his emotion than the rational way. Because he is an irrational person here. And when we are talking about an irrational young boy, things do turn out differently. Here the burden is why this is such a good decision it's going to be for Mahito, right? First of all, exactly if you start thinking from the Mahito's perspective and exactly the things that he has experienced in his life, right? First of all, he doesn't have any control about his life. The life lesson he has already gone through. First of all, this is the very much time of the war. Things can be very much drastic and very much, set in its time. And when this kind of time, he just lost one of his very important parent, mother. Mother has a very important role in every children's life. It's very obvious, and mothers are play such an important role when you grow up, especially when you are young. He has already learned the life lessons. And when this is the time, the extreme end of human era that he's seen around his, like the time of the war, the loss of a parent, and the absurd changes that shatters his life. Because now he has to even changes his location and relocates to another certain kind of rural area and has no control over his life. Things turns out very different from him. Because as a young boy, what he would genuinely want to have in this certain kind of time of his life, simply, very simply, he would want to enjoy his life. He doesn't want to have a very much complex life. Because who would want to have a very much complex life? Who would have to think about so many different kind of certain problems? He wants adventure because it's very obvious when you're in a certain kind of young age, the very much important thing in your life that is the adventure. And in no way possible a kid who is in a very much young life and at a certain point of their time, that certain kind of thing that gives him adventure, this is something that's going to attract him, right? The next thing, he doesn't care about the life lessons and a certain kind of things that gives him so much kind of responsibility or sense of pressure, because that is very obvious. And when things the humans, and generally the way that the human kind of things that works, and he's already seen, the humans, they would do just anything, they would just break, they would just kill, and they would just do anything, and especially he belongs from Japan. We all know the worst can turn out even more worse in there, and the way the things of, not just all the trauma from the loss of the parent as well, because when all the certain kind of bad things happen, and at the same time things do turn out even much more in a worse sense. And when the mother of such an important thing, this kind of absurd changes, and not just like certain kind of these two losses, when his father remarries, this is something that creates another layer here as well, because he saw his father changes. It's very obvious if your one parent dies and another person remarries and wants to move on your life. This is one thing. But when you are a young boy and you see your father remarry someone else and your aunt and moves on to another place and you start living there, this is something as a young person, this is something that affects you, because you do not know even if your mother leaves the world exactly what to do suddenly, because that's very obvious. As a young person, the most important part of their life becomes their mother, and when this kind of certain kind of changes happen, it's very obvious for any kind of other and person who thinks from a very rational perspective. This kind of thing that does make sense, like moving on, remarriage, shifting to other kind of location. But if you rethink from his perspective, who gives much more, much more importance to the emotion than rationality, this is something that holds him even more. And when he sees this kind of thing, his father's moving on, and being an irrational kid here, it's very obvious that he would not accept someone else as his mother. That's why there's certainly another more kind of business to his father as well. Whatever the scene that thinks everything is going, together when things are coming up, this is something that makes everything even worse. And the life lessons that is coming up, as from this kind of point of his life, he does not care about the lessons anymore. Because when you're losing everything, when you're losing your one kind of parent, you're losing the most important person of your life, you're just shifting to another place, you see your father changing so much, there's no kind of control in your life. Thinking rationally and thinking about, what are the life lessons that I can learn from here? This is not something you're going to think about, right? Because this is a very human thing. I would have thinking about that. No one would. Now, this is the most important part here that we're talking about. Second, everything, there's no point of certainty in his life. And there's no point of certainty in your life. This is something he would want, the very first thing, that to feel back control, that is the sense of urgency and the control and the agency. Why? Because when he sees this kind of opportunities that he can go to the other world, right? There are certain kind of ways that can go predictable way. It can be easy and simple. At least the life he is living right now, it's going to be much more control, and you know, predict that it will be easy for him to go in so many certain ways. It will be easy for him to understand, because obviously the things he is feeling right now, it's not something that you want to understand, and obviously the adventure and the agency of control that you can decide is something that attracts him the most. And the scapegoat for any obvious young child who is going through all these things, the very first thing he would want to go for is the scapegoat. And when, as from everything he has gone through, and that's for things see that this is something he's going to see, right? The opportunity comes up and he obviously tells you, oh no, there will be so much trauma, he wouldn't just want to go suddenly. The trauma is exactly what is going to motivate him even more to